From Kern Government Television, welcome to this week's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting, originating from the County Administrative Center located at 1115 Truxtun Avenue, Bakersfield, California. Kern County's vision is to create and maintain a customer-centered county government designed to garner the confidence, support, and trust of the people we serve. Today's Kern County Board of Supervisors meeting will convene momentarily.
Okay, this board to reconvene. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Supervisor Gleason.
Here.
Supervisor Scribner.
Here.
Supervisor Maggard.
Here.
Supervisor Couch.
Here.
Supervisor Perez.
Here.
Madam Council, report on action is taken in closed session.
Good afternoon, Chairman Gleason and members of the board. This afternoon, your board heard items 61, correct that, 60, 61, and 62. On 60 and 62, no reportable action was taken. With respect to item number 61, your board met in closed session to confer with council and staff regarding the matter of Verizon versus State Board of Equalization. This is Sacramento County case number 34-2011-0011606029 CUMC GDS. This is a challenge to the value established for property taxes for properties assessed by the state of California but collected by the county of Kern. By a unanimous 5-0 vote, your board approved joining with the State Board of Equalization and 37 other counties in a settlement agreement and authorized county council to execute the settlement agreement and release of claims in this matter. By signing this agreement, it limits the liability of the county of Kern to a tax credit of $76,800 to be applied to the 2016-2017 tax year. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Council. Okay, we're going to start this afternoon off with a review of the consent agenda. Agendas are on the back of the room on the tables there. Please grab one and follow along. Consent agenda, all items are listed with a CA above the item number are considered routine and non-controversial by county staff. Consent items will be considered first and may be approved by one motion if no member of the board or audience wishes to comment or ask questions. If comment or discussion is desired by anyone, the item will be removed from the consent agenda, will be considered in listed sequence with an opportunity for any member of the public to address the board concerning the item before action is taken. So going through the agenda on the consent agenda, it starts off under Planning and Natural Resources Department, items number 3, 4, under Planning and Natural Resources Department, again, number 5 and 6, Public Works Department, 7 and 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, under County Administrative Office, numbers 19 through 23, under General Services Division is 24 through 36. Under Human Resources Divisions, items 37 and 37. Under consideration of ordinances introduced on June 7th, 2016, number 38, matters for executive approval, items 39 through 43. Any member of the public wish to pull any of these items off the consent agenda? Now's the time. Seeing none, I'll bring it back to the board for comment.
Motion on consent.
Second.
Please cast your votes.
Motion is approved. All ayes.
Okay, we're going to start off this afternoon by with our continuing items from this morning. So the first item we'll consider is under County Administrative Office. It was item number 15 on this morning's agenda. It is now item A on this afternoon's agenda. And it is fiscal year 2016-17 budget discussion and proposed preliminary recommended budget to establish spending authority until final budget adoption in August 2016. Could we have a real quick review, Mr. Nylon, in 2 or 3 sentences or shorter?
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you have a proposed preliminary budget for your consideration. As was discussed, County Budget Act requires that a budget be passed. It is really spending authority for the next year, and you will have budget hearings already set for July and for August. If the board would like to have, weekly meetings or every other week, we can certainly do that. You currently asked us to bring back a list of the funded vacant positions, and I don't see one at this second. They're working on it, but I think One of the things you may do or want to do is direct our office to do a hard freeze on every vacancy that's funded. If the department believes that they have justification for bringing it forward to you, then they can bring in open session why they want to hire that person. And that way you, by that action, have frozen every single funded vacant position and allow the departments to come forward and justify why they want to hire.
Thank you, Mr. Nyland. We've already had public comment, so we don't need to reopen public hearing, and we'll bring it back to the board for consideration and thoughts. Mr. Couch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Nyland, what's the action that the board needs to take to actually get budget savings? Is it deleting a funded position? Is it unfunding a funded position? Is it either of those? How do we get there?
Well,
specifically.
Supervisor Couch, when you fund or unfund a position, it's really a departmental internal issue. It's not something that this board actually does for the position. If you want to delete a funded position, that immediately creates the savings. But essentially, you could say, again, you could put a hiring freeze on all positions, and then you're saving that money as well.
You're saving the cash, but are we decreasing a budget?
Well, if you delete the positions before the budget is held or during the budget, then you're actually saving budget dollars that can be allocated elsewhere.
And is that the only way to save those budget dollars? Is the deletion?
What you can do.
You understand where I'm going is that the only way to save those budget dollars is to delete that position?
Supervisor Couch, I don't believe that's the only way. You could say, okay, Mr. Nylon, look at County Council's budget, and they have $35 million of vacant funded positions. No, they have $10,000 of vacant funded positions. You can say we're going to reduce their total appropriation by the equivalent of that funded vacant position, and you will be achieving those savings. The department head now has to figure out how they're going to do what they do, but you can achieve those savings by just reducing their appropriation.
Either way, if that position is deleted, that department head has to come back and ask for the position to be added, or under your scenario, they have to come back and give a justification for the hire, and we have to then fund it.
Those are two options,
Right?
absolutely.
Okay. All right, thank
And
you.
for the record, I'd like to reflect that County Council only has 2 positions. One of them is a paralegal position that is desperately needed in litigation that is due to start on July 11th, 2016. And the other one is an office services position that is desperately needed in our juvenile justice division, and they are set for interviews tomorrow. So if you do have that policy, I would request that those 2 positions be exempted from it.
Everybody else come up.
I'm not prepared to go there with that particular topic, and the reason I'm not is because I trust that our department heads aren't as short-sighted as I am oftentimes, and they're building plans for the future, whether that's funded positions at Lerdo Jail or lab techs or people in CPS, Child Protective Services, and they're building their game plan, and they're managing their offices the best way they can, and having those resources are a critical component of that. I'm not saying that I'd be opposed to that vote, but before I would make a vote on that, I would like to hear from all my department heads on how that would impact them, what their thoughts are, and so I would not be in favor of that at the present time.
Mr. Chairman,
Please.
I just want to back you up on that. That's exactly the way I feel about it. I think that an analysis of our vacant funded positions and how different departments are utilizing those for their plans for next year, or if we have some departments that we've talked about today that have vacant positions that could be unfunded, and therefore maybe you can avoid layoffs. Those are great conversations for us to have, but I think that what we need to be doing is asking CAO to come back to us. I know we have a meeting in a week. I don't want to just give you a week to do this, but we've got 2 weeks in the early July, but there would be one meeting before our budget discussion on the 26th that we could perhaps have as an agenda item for us to really dig into that, and then the department heads would have a week before we go into July 26th budget discussion, knowing full well that we're not going to be adopting the final budget until August. Does that sound reasonable, Mr. Nyland?
Supervisor Scrivner through the chair, absolutely.
Okay. So,
Supervisor Couch.
I wasn't necessarily saying thinking we would necessarily go there today. What as a follow-up to that, since we're sort of giving our opinions here, what is the board's opinion of the hard freeze that Mr. Nyland just suggested, which I think would be a prudent and smart move on our part?
I'll give you my opinion, since I was seeing the names up there, is I'm not prepared to give you my opinion until I study the issue and understand the issue and all its implications to the department heads, because I think in creating this new world order, we're going to need department heads who are completely involved in the way we go about it, and they're going to be the key drivers of our new world order. And so I'll be looking for their inputs, and then I'd be glad to offer you my opinion. Supervisor Maggard.
Thank you. So as we're asked today to approve this spending authority, I want to make sure that I understand a couple of fundamental elements to it. The Sheriff's Department, I believe, made a shift already with funded unfilled positions that will result in not having any less deputies on the street tomorrow than were on the street today. Is that the case? And I want to ask a similar question about the fire department, and I want to ask a similar question about the district attorney's office. When we vote for this spending authority, are there going to be less prosecutors, firemen, or deputies on the street than there were today?
I was a lot more comfortable up there than I am down here, but it depends on what your definition of deputies on the street, what it means, because we have specialized units that are gang unit, our narcotic unit, our unit that works with the FBI on terrorism. Those cases those positions are going to be not there. But deputies on the street, where people call for 911, we're hoping to maintain the same level, which is, of course, totally inadequate.
And until we have, thank you, Sheriff. We may have more for you here in just a second, if you don't mind. Until we have adopted the final budget in August, I think it's important for the public to know that there are as many deputies responding to 911 calls as there were the night before, and I'm very grateful that the sheriff, by adjusting those funded unfilled positions, has found a way to do that. It's that kind of thing I want to know before we adopt this thing in August. What other adjustments have we made? What have we shifted from non-public safety? What have we forced non-public safety to endure in larger cuts so that we can help sustain those positions in public safety billets? It's that kind of thing I want to make sure we get to. So are we, I don't know how to articulate that today so the public knows what we've done and what we're doing.
Supervisor Maggard, through the chair today, you are requested to approve a preliminary budget. You are not taking action to delete any positions. You are not taking action to lay off anybody today. That is an action you have to affirmatively take if that's going to be your course of action.
And I'm okay not deleting all those unfilled, but yet funded positions today, but I want there to be discussion, and I want their CEO's office to come back to us with, these are the consequences if we do that here, there, and across the board. I'd like to know that. And I want to make sure that when we do make our motion today, that it reflects this board's interest in doing many of the things that we've kicked around, everything from we do essentially have a 5-year strategic plan, but the other things that the chairman articulated a few moments ago.
Supervisor Scrivner.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll go ahead and give some of my thoughts on the discussion that we had this morning. and hopefully we can move this along and get this preliminary budget adopted so we meet the deadline. First of all, Mr. Nyland, we had some discussion today about the priorities of the board and public safety versus other general fund departments. I think the public needs to have some idea of what's to come next year. Can you give us some information about how it is that our other general fund, non-safety departments, they're not talking about layoffs at this point, and why is that the case, and then what do we expect to see next year?
Great, thank you. Supervisor Scribner through the chair. It's a great question. You're right, it is a multi-year budget. We are looking at a 5% reduction this year, a 5.6% reduction the year thereafter, and then somewhere in the neighborhood of a 2.5 for the remaining 2 years of this plan. The departments who have, what your board has asked the departments to do is live with 5% less net general fund cost. Some of those departments have been, and this is no way disparaging other departments, you're saying some departments have been very fiscally prudent, have been saving their money, have been doing everything they can because they've seen the price of oil. This is not a secret. This is something that the community knows, and they have been preparing their budgets for a long time to absorb the cuts without having to lay off staff, at least initially. Some of the departments are working to use whatever remaining budget savings incentives they have or to live off funded vacant positions for another year. And some departments are doing layoffs now. So I think that's the spectrum. My guess is next year when the board is faced with a 5.6% reduction, you will see significantly more layoffs by many, many more departments.
And just to, this board needs to bear in mind, I believe, that if we do take action that if impacts those funded vacant positions, that could have an immediate result potentially on departments' need to do layoffs. We don't know exactly how that will impact each and every department, but I think that's why it's important for us to take the time and come back later on in July for us to really dig into that issue specifically. I know that your staff, Ms. Lawson, she tracks this, tracks the budget very well, and the assumptions that she has are usually right on target. However, we do know that some things are going to change as far as our fiscal picture between now and August when we adopt the budget. And so knowing that we have our safety departments that are talking about their challenges, and I really, really do appreciate the information that each and every one of them provided, the district attorney, sheriff, fire chief, et cetera. We do know that there are going to be tweaks that can be made when we finally do adopt the budget. And so I want to make everyone aware of some of the concerns that I have initially, and so hopefully we can find ways to address those. Obviously, the suggested closure of the Rosamond substation is of huge concern to me. I don't make the call on that, but I'm not trying to put that on the sheriff, but I want him to know and the board to know that I'm interested in doing whatever we can to avoid those kinds of impacts to our rural communities, particularly one that's so far flung and I know is suffering from a lot of influx of crime, unfortunately, from LA County. The Golden Hills Station 13, there is a plan to close that station. We opened that station in June of 2014, so just 2 years ago that was open. When we opened it, it was supposed to be a seasonal station. That was the plan, but the chief has been able to keep that open throughout the 2 years because of the calls for service, and it's been a great asset for us to have in the area. I believe when we were doing the ribbon cutting on a Saturday morning at 10 o'clock, they had already gone on their first call before we had even opened the station. So it obviously is a great service to the public. And so but that is a station that's funded with overtime, and that's an area in the fire department that I believe we really are going to need to address in order to balance that budget. But we don't know what's going to happen with the SAFER grant. We don't know what monies may be coming in from the tree mortality with the state. We're not sure what's going to happen with the first responders fee, and those are things that I think certainly can impact not only the entire fire department's budget, but that particular station as well. And so my hope is that we can find a way to keep that station open until the end of the summer because of the drought situation that we have up in the mountains, because of the fact that our forests really are in a critical point when it comes to the fire risk. And so I'd like to see us find a way to keep that station as we initially intended it to be, as a seasonal station during fire season. Obviously, the points that were brought up by the sheriff and I know that are supported by KLEA with our challenges in retaining and recruiting our sheriff deputies, that's not an issue that we're going to be able to solve this year in the budget, particularly, given the challenge that we have. But that is an issue that we are going to have to solve at some point and do it as quickly as possible, because we're training deputies and then they are moving on to other agencies. Not only does that cost us money that we never realize the return on that investment, but it just creates a cycle where we're constantly trying to fill positions from of talented people. The road fund, it was discussed by Mr. Pope, our Public Works Director. I really am nervous in the idea of relying on Sacramento to come up with a solution to that problem, but they're going to have to figure out a way to fix their formula, because we're not going to be able to get past the next fiscal year in this current situation. Otherwise, we may have to make the hard choice of putting more general fund dollars into our road maintenance, so we're not spending 5 times as much down the line to repair the same stretch of road. So those are my thoughts initially, and I appreciate once again everybody's input.
Thank you, Supervisor Scrivener. My last comment for the fire chief is have you had conversations with the Kern? One of your recommendations was to eliminate 3 engineers at the Kern Airport. And my question to you is, have you had conversations with the Kern Airport and that item is on this agenda? Is in your proposed budget?
A letter has been sent.
He said a letter has been sent, so communication has occurred. Thanks. Any other thoughts?
Chairman?
Yes, ma'am.
I'll be brief. Thank you. I believe, Mr. Nyland, you have told us a number of times that this is the worst budget that we have had or seen in 30 years. And while things appear to be moving in a better direction, based on some changes we've seen in the last few weeks in terms of oil price, it is very minimal, and it is going to be some time before we are in a meaningful place to get us back to a place where we know we can be under better circumstances. So I appreciate the sacrifice and hard work of all of our departments. This is a truly miserable time for Kern County. Appreciate the CAO's work. It is not fun to come here and deliver the news that you have today, but I appreciate you working with our department heads to be creative, to encourage them, and to realize that we're a team and we should be united in how we make sure this county is sustainable over the long term. With that said, I do believe big changes are in place, and that goes for my office as well. It's one of the reasons I've reduced my staff to 1 full-time person and don't have any plans to change that in the near future. I just don't know that it can be sustained and that it's justified. So with that said, I look forward to further discussions, further fixes, further creativity as we move to July and August. But at this time, I would say hats off to all the hard work. And as difficult as it is, I have every faith and hope that no one will be so disproportionately disadvantaged through this process as to completely lose morale and hope and faith in this board. So thank you.
Supervisor Maggart.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would make a motion then that we adopt this proposed spending authority, this proposed budget with the direction, with a specific direction to the CAO that you come back to us every couple of weeks as we progress with discussions of how we are evolving towards shifting what I think is the priority of this board towards making sure that we are preserving public safety as much as possible, and the consequences of that priority to other departments, that you bring to us what your plans are as we evolve a plan to make that happen. And I want to thank the sheriff and others this morning for what they did this morning to try to find ways to stave off these cuts. And I assure you we will try to work with you to work our way through this. Same with the district attorney and with the fire department.
We have a motion.
I'll second it.
All in favor, please cast your votes.
Motion is approved, all ayes.
Okay, moving on to item number, item B on this afternoon's schedule, but it's item number 18 from this morning's schedule, and it's under the county council, and it's a public hearing regarding proposed amendment to ordinance G-8630, extending moratorium on medical marijuana dispensaries for 10 months and 15 days pursuant to Government Code 65858 Alpha. Madam Council.
Good afternoon, Chairman
Let's
Gleason.
just give it a minute. Let people clear out. Okay, Madam Council, go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chairman Gleason and members of the board. In May of this year, your board adopted an urgency ordinance for a moratorium against new medical marijuana dispensaries in the unincorporated areas of the county. Since then, we have been working diligently towards reviewing this matter and attempting to formulate a plan forward with respect to proposals to your board regarding how to handle the issue of medical marijuana dispensaries. I also want to report that since then, we have also filed our briefs with the California Supreme Court on the issue of County of Kern versus TCEF. That's the case involving medical marijuana dispensaries and Measure G. And I'm happy to report that the California State Association of Counties, as well as the League of California Cities, has agreed to, and in fact did, file a letter of support in support of our petition for a hearing before the California Supreme Court. It's actually a petition for review in front of the California Supreme Court. So we are hoping that we will hear from the Supreme Court soon and that it will be a favorable decision and that they will agree to review that case. In the meantime, we are moving forward on trying to address the issue of dispensaries in the county, and Assistant County Counsel Mark Nations has been working very hard on this. I'm going to turn the microphone over to Mark, and he will talk to you about what we are asking your board to do today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. As noted by the County Council, we are engaged in a long-term analysis of the medical marijuana dispensary regulation, and that will culminate in the development of alternative proposals, which will in turn eventually become the subject of an environmental impact report. All of this is going to take time. Thus, to avoid the establishment of uses that may conflict with whatever regulatory framework is adopted by your board in the future, we are asking that the moratorium be extended as authorized by Government Code 6585A. As we mentioned in our board memorandum, the legal landscape in this area is changing, and it will continue to change. We must take into consideration in any series of proposals that we bring forward the nature of those legal changes. We have no reason to believe, given the number of existing dispensaries in the unincorporated areas of the county and within the incorporated cities, that the extension of the moratorium will pose a hardship for anyone that is authorized to purchase medical cannabis. Finally, as noted in our board documents, given that this is an extension of an existing moratorium, this action maintains the status quo and will not cause any direct or indirect physical change in the environment, and therefore is not a project under the California Environmental Quality Act. We recommend that you make the CEQA findings listed in the agenda and in our board letter in approving the requested action, and we are prepared to answer any questions that you may have now or following the public comment received after you open the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nations. I'll open the public hearing right now. Anybody in the public who would like to make a comment on this issue, please come forward.
Hello, Board. I've been here since 9 this morning, so
Sorry.
thank you.
I wouldn't wish that on anybody.
Thank you. My name is Victoria Golden, and I am a medical marijuana patient. In 2004, I suffered traumatic brain injury, and since then, I have developed 7 autoimmune diseases. Also with that, I have 5 of my organs that are not functioning properly or working at all. So I have to really be careful of medication I'm taking. Medication for certain autoimmune diseases left me half blind in both eyes. So I'm really careful on that. I also have appeared in Sacramento for the Arthritis Foundation, for the summit up there. I have come across many people with autoimmune diseases that take 7 medications for one item, for one illness. I have 7. So it's very dangerous for me. The county should not vote to extend the moratorium, but provide patients with options to obtain medical marijuana legally. We believe this need to be regulated, and a moratorium is not the answer. The courts determined, and the county voters, to regulation, not to pass the moratorium. And that's why we passed Measure G. I helped collect signatures for that. We ask that you respect the ruling of the courts and without extending the ordinance. Instead, we ask you to draft a new ordinance that will respect the will of the voters and protect the health and safety of the patients. This really matters to me, and I take 2 medications only for everything I have, and that's the only pain medication, and it's a safer alternative. The county has, even on the news recently, 75% of population believes that there is a use for medical marijuana. It just needs to be studied more, and it does control all my symptoms. Thank you.
Excuse me, ma'am. Did you say your name was Mrs. Golden?
Victoria Golden.
Ms. Vic Golden. Where do you get your marijuana now?
The club on H Street.
Thank you.
But I go to the one that has been around since, because about 10 years since the ordinance got passed, and not all the other little ones that popped up. I don't believe, it does need regulation. I don't believe those are functioning correctly, and they need to be regulated. Thank you. And taxed to help pay for everything else we're so short of in this town, because we can't let detention officers off or our sheriff to arrest people for patients for the marijuana, and who's going to take care of them?
Thank you, Ms. Golden.
David Fluhart, Havilah First District. Last, I think it was 2 weeks ago, a month and a half, I'm not sure when, but when this was first described, Mr. Nations had described it as a reset button, just to stop and take a good look at everything, and a reset button. And I think it's a good idea to put a moratorium on them so that they're not popping up and disappearing and jumping everywhere, because, like she said, they like mushrooms in the garden or something. And a reset button would be really nice to press. We've had a long gloom and doom filled morning of budget talk and all that good stuff, but I'm an optimist, and I know it's hard to smile through the fear, but the Chinese proverb says that crisis is also opportunity. So I think hitting that reset button is a good idea. Take a look at what's going on, and I'm all for it. And that's all I got to say. And thank you for your time and effort and patience and hard work with everything that you guys do. And I know we win because it's in God we trust right there on the wall. So sleep good tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Fluvat. Any other comments from the public? Close the public hearing, bring it back to the board.
I'll move staff's recommendation.
Before I second, I think Ms. Goldner might want to say something. Do you? Am I getting the...
No, well, I just wanted to put on the record that what we're asking your board to do is to enact the ordinance to amend and extend the urgency interim ordinance G8630, enacting a moratorium on the establishment of new medical marijuana dispensaries and the relocation of existing dispensaries, to make the findings that the adoption of the amendment is not a project under CEQA pursuant to CEQA guideline 15378, and that it is otherwise exempt from environmental review pursuant to CEQA guidelines 15308 and 15061B3.
Thank you, Ms. Goldman.
I'll second the motion. I think that we reiterated this when we first passed the moratorium, but it probably is good for us to say now that this action isn't closing any dispensaries. What this is doing, it's providing the board an opportunity to prevent others from opening while we are trying to formulate what our plan might be to regulate in the future, because we feel that that may be the ultimate alternative for us, and so that's what we're using this time to do. I hope that helps clarify. Thank you.
Please cast your votes.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah. Mr. Maggard.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to say something to Ms. Golden, I think is what you said your last name was. The action we're taking will have no effect on your ability to go to H Street to the dispensary that you want to go to pick up your medical marijuana while this is ferreted out. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved. All ayes.
Next item is on the Human Services. It's item number 24 for this morning's meeting. And it's item C on this afternoon's meeting. It's a request for additional appropriation of unanticipated revenue from County General Fund for appropriations for contingencies for assistance payments in foster care and adoptions programs due to higher than anticipated caseloads and lower than anticipated federal share costs for fiscal year 2015-16 in the amount of $4,180,300. Ms. Murphy.
Good afternoon, Chairman Gleason, members of the board. Just to reiterate what you said, yes, this is a request for appropriation of unanticipated revenue, and as you may recall, the CO's office came before your board on February 2nd, 2016 to advise of an increased need in county contribution. The CO came back on May 3rd, 2016 to update that amount to the approximate $4.2 million that you just referred to, Chairman. This is for the foster care assistance programs, as stated, as due to a higher than anticipated caseloads and lower than anticipated share of costs. It's important to note that these payments are specifically for children who have come into the foster care system because of abuse or neglect and no fault of their own, and these dollars go specifically for the payments to shelter these children. None of these dollars are used for the operational budget. This is strictly the aid side of the budget that we're required to legally fund. So with that, I would recommend that your board approve the appropriation of unanticipated county general fund for foster care programs in the amount of $4,180,300 and authorize the auditor, controller, county clerk to process the specified budgetary adjustments in accounting transactions.
Thank you, Ms. Murphy. I'll open up for public comment. Anybody in the public wish to comment on this issue? Seeing none, close public hearing and bring it back to the board. Anybody with any thoughts?
You need a motion to approve?
I need a motion to approve or this item fails.
Then you have it.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your vote.
I'm sorry. I hit it. We'll do it over.
We have a motion and a second. Please cast your votes. Again.
Thank you. The motion is approved. All ayes.
Outstanding. Okay, now we're going to revert back to our normal sequenced agenda on the afternoon, and we're going to start off with public presentations, which is item number 1 on this afternoon's agenda. Public presentation, this portion of the meeting is for persons to address the board in any matter not on this agenda but under the jurisdiction of the board. Board members may respond briefly to statements made or questions posed. They may ask a question for clarification, make a referral to staff for factual information, or request staff to report back to the board at a later meeting. Also, the board may take action to direct staff to place a matter of business on a future agenda. Speakers limited to 2 minutes, and I'll stop speaking really fast. Please state and spell your name. Anybody wishing to make a public presentation at the present time? Yes, sir.
On what subject?
Anything you'd like to, as long as it's not on the agenda this afternoon.
My name is Tom Gallagher, and I'm addressing the proposed solar system on Rosamond, the Valentine Solar Project.
Excuse me, sir, that is on this afternoon's agenda. So we're going to get to that. It's already been approved.
It was supposed, well, the notice I got, it says a 2 o'clock meeting today.
Yes, sir. And that was on the consent agenda.
Perhaps I'm not following the procedure, but you say it's already been approved?
What happened, sir, is it was on the agenda as a consent item, and we read off the consent agenda. We asked for public comment on the consent agenda. No one commented on it, and then we had a vote on the consent agenda. But what we can do is, go ahead.
Well, my question is, I was not notified. The notification I got was 2 o'clock today.
Right.
So that's why I came at 2 o'clock today and not in the morning.
Right. I'm thankful you did, and I understand your issue. And what we're going to do, can we reopen this item?
Supervisor, Chairman Gleason, you can, and members of the board, you can make someone, if they wish, can make a motion to remove this item from the consent agenda and reconsider it, if your board wishes to do so.
We have, Mr. Gallagher, we have a procedural issue that we're trying to work through here because we already took a vote on this item that you'd wish to speak on because it's on the consent agenda, which we did at the beginning of this meeting.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying, but I don't understand what you're saying, obviously.
So what we're going to do is try our best to accommodate you. Is there any board member who would wish to pull this consent agenda, item number 4, off the agenda so Mr. Gallagher can speak?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Confusion might be, I'm going to jump in here. It occurred at the 2 o'clock meeting while you were sitting there. You just didn't hear what the chairman said.
Oh,
it didn't happen at 9 o'clock.
There were no other agenda lists at the table when I came in, so I was listening for something that sounded familiar to what information I had, and unfortunately, I don't understand the terminology when you start reading numbers and paragraphs and so forth.
I appreciate it, Mr. Gallagher. We're going to take care of you. If you just stand still for a second there. And
Chairman Gleason, one of the things that you might wish to consider, though, is my understanding that the applicant may have already left the building. So if you were to take it off and have it reconsidered, they would have the right to be present as well. So your dilemma and your options are, 1, to keep what you did earlier and leave it as it is. 2, someone can make a motion to reconsider it and have it withdrawn from the consent agenda, and you could hear it without the applicant being here. I wouldn't recommend that. Or 3, you could do the same thing and then continue it to another day. I would defer to our planning director regarding that as far as the logistics goes. But those are your 3 options.
Ms. Soviat. We were right with you, Mr. Gallagher. Are you following this at all, sir?
Yes.
Okay. Ms. Soviat, are you familiar with where we are in the proceedings?
I am. Thank you very much. Could I ask you to ask Mr. Gallagher if he submitted a letter of comment to your board?
Yes, I did.
I just wanted to verify that letter was given to you this afternoon as an addendum, so you should have it at the dais. So Mr. Gallagher's comments were put into the record. You did receive them. You did consider them. I would, this has happened. I just want to defer to the applicant who has been through a 18-month process on an environmental impact report and is attempting to move forward with this project. If your board would take into account the fact that you've received Mr. Gallagher's letter and perhaps review that letter and see if you believe that we need to reopen the hearing, that would be my recommendation, that first you take into consideration the nature of his comments.
Madam Council?
I concur.
Okay, so we can take this letter that you wrote to the board, review the letter, and see if it had any effect on the decision that we had made. And if it had some impact, we could pull that item off.
Yes, but you would need to renotice this so that the applicant could be present. My advice is that you take a few moments right now, review the letter, and see if that makes any difference to you. If it doesn't, then my advice would be to proceed, meaning stick with what you already did earlier.
Supervisor Scrivener, any thoughts?
Well, thanks for putting me on the spot, Mr. Chairman.
My pleasure.
This project is in my district. And Mr. Gallagher, I did read your letter before we took action to approve the consent calendar. I understand your concerns about potential impacts on the property that you own to the south of the project. However, what we were considering was an EIR and making sure that a thorough and extensive environmental review had been done on the project. And I'm comfortable with the decision that I made to approve it on the consent calendar. Certainly respect your opposition to the project, but I feel confident and comfortable with the decision that I made. Thank you.
Well, I don't know. I guess I can't make a comment then, since you've already made your decision.
Make a comment. You got a minute.
Well, the part that disturbed me the most is when I purchased this property, it was the powers that be told me it was for residential construction. I was buying it for the future, for my children or grandchildren even. The area overlooks the Antelope Valley on a slight slope, and it's an ideal position for a house in time. And now that the powers that be are saying, no, you bought your property in good faith, you paid taxes for 45 years on it, but now it's probably not going to be worth too much. Sorry. That's my feeling.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Okay, moving along, we have, where were we? Board member announcements. Any member of the board wishing to make a statement? Hearing none, we'll move to item number 18. Number 18 is request under County Administrative Office, request to set a public hearing to consider the possible election of the County of Kern to file a notice to become a groundwater sustainability agency for the portions of Kern County subbasin of the Tulare Lake County groundwater basin, which have been subject to notices filed by the City of Bakersfield, Kern Delta Water District, Kern Water Agency, Improvement District Number 4, and Greenfield County Water District, filed on April 21st, 2016. Mr. Allen.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, good afternoon again. Alan Christensen from my office will be leading this discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Nallon. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, as the chair mentioned, this is to set a public hearing for a hearing on July 19th at 9 a.m. to receive public comment to consider if the county should file it to become a groundwater sustainability agency for the portions of the sub-basin, the Kern County sub-basin, which correspond with notices filed by the City of Bakersfield, Kern Delta Water District, Kern County Water Agency, ID4, and Greenfield Water Agency, or Water District, pardon me. As you've heard before, the Sustainable Groundwater Management Act, or SGMA, allows eligible public agencies to elect to become a GSA for certain basins. Because the county's jurisdiction covers the entire basin, it can become a GSA for that entire basin or any portion thereof. It is our hope that that would be done in cooperation with other agencies that have or plan to file. Your board has expressed a strong interest in being involved and representing the residents in this vital public policy matter. Consistent with that interest, the county must file competing notice or notices with DWR no later than July 20th of 2016. Therefore, the hearing set for the day before on July 19th. Accordingly, we're recommending the board set the public hearing, consider the possible election to become a GSA for the areas described, and direct staff to publish a notice of the public hearing as required by California Water Code and Government Code in the Bakersfield Californian. As just a few highlights, if I could, on SGMA-related items, your board acted a few weeks ago to file over the top of Buena Vista Water Storage District. That application has been received by the state, and they have accepted our application. And when you go out to the site, the state site, it says in a description to the right, overlap. So we're in overlap with Buena Vista according to the state. Another item, we have set up staff meetings, meetings with staff, elected officials, and plan to do more with members of several agencies, the Kern River GSA, which is, we've referred to those members today, Buena Vista Water District, Kern Delta Water District, and others. So we have at least 3 meetings set up, and others coming towards the end of the week and next week. We have also requested to be on the Kern Groundwater Authority agenda next week from tomorrow to discuss this item, and we'll again open up some dialogue with them on the county's interests and concerns. We've also been contacted by DWR regarding the grant that we applied for, $500,000. We expect a contract to come before you in July, late July, and then thereafter we'll be able to spend those funds. Remember, $250,000 for one basin and $250,000 for the other basin. And then I was not there, but a meeting last week of the Indian Wells Valley Water District eligible agencies, actually Indian Wells Valley eligible agencies, produced a general agreement on a joint powers agreement. So hopefully that will be coming back to your board soon. So we're making some progress in the eastern side of Kern. I'm happy to answer any questions. Again, our recommendation is to set the public hearing and to publish the notice.
Thank you, Mr. Christensen. Open up the public hearing for people to comment on this issue. Seeing none, we close the public hearing and bring it back to the board. Supervisor Couch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the same reasons that we had, instead of rehashing them all during the Buena Vista discussion, I'll move the staff's recommendation and let me know when all of the meetings that you had just referenced are scheduled so I can, if I need to be there, I can make time on my calendar to do that. Thank you.
We'll do that.
Do we have a motion? Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just have a question. Ms. Goldner, I had a meeting earlier this week with the general manager and also the council for the Greenfield Water District, and basically what their attorney would like to do, and I imagine, I know you know this individual, I'm not remembering his name off the top of my head, and I apologize for that, but I know that you know him. What his request was is for the attorneys to get together and basically work through language that could be used in some kind of an agreement or an MOU or whatever. So do you have that planned? I know Mr. Christensen was talking about a series of meetings, but specifically for the attorneys to sit down. This is a meeting where I don't want to be anywhere near, but I think that since this is a legal issue, these are concerns that you have with discrepancies or contradictions in SGMA, and you put enough concern in my mind to file whatever we did that last week or the week before. I think that his point is well taken, that this should be the attorneys at least given an opportunity to sit down and try and work through that language.
Supervisor Scrivener, through the chair, I haven't been contacted by the attorney for Greenfield, but I'm happy to meet with him or her or any water lawyer that wants to talk about this. However, I am guided by the policy directions of the board with respect to the issues that they feel are important to be included in any type of a JPA or an MOU or an agreement like that. But I am certainly happy to sit down and meet with any attorney that wants to try to hash out some legal language to resolve what my concerns were about the conflict between the statute and my legal concern about interfering with your board's land use authority. So the short answer is yes. The long answer is I have to be mindful of what the board's policy directions are.
Well, speaking as one board member, I think that I would like for you to meet with this particular individual, and then the councils, I believe, from the other entities that are represented in the Kern River, GSA. So
happy to do
my
that.
colleagues are interested in having that occur as well.
Thank you, Supervisor Kern. Don't we have that matrix that articulated what our concerns were?
We do. It's being run through the county council legal mill right now before it's going to be released to anybody.
So that would be a starting point for the conversation, for you, a guide, for you to have a general idea of what questions we have. So whether their answers are sufficient or not is up to us. But the fact that they answer those questions would be a good starting point.
That's correct. And any discussion that I would have would also be with the CAO there as well, because we're working arm in arm with the CAO's office on this.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, we have a motion, I think, don't we? Looking for a second.
I'll second it, but I made the motion.
You made the motion? Can he second his own motion? Go.
I'll second that.
I'll second. Please cast your votes.
The motion is approved, all ayes.
That brings us to the end of a very challenging day. Thank you all for coming. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
All right.